All right, welcome back to another episode of It's Personal. Always excited for my guests, but I'm gonna allow. I was gonna share and introduce him, but I'm gonna allow him to do that, and then we're gonna talk about him because I'm very, very excited to chop it up with my guest today. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Nick Brooks. I'm an author, filmmaker, rapper, all around storyteller.
Multifaceted. I mean, I have been following you for a while now. You just mentioned that, and I don't know if you could say it or not, but you just mentioned you're working on something. Is that public knowledge?
it's not. It's semi-public. I can say that I'm working on. I'm at Rockstar working on a video game due 2025.
Uh huh.
That's what that's yeah, the
And I
biggest the
mean,
biggest game in the world.
it's so crazy because like I know just from again listening to you and watching you online that you are into so many things. Um, how did that happen? I always start with the question like, actually, let's go back a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, Tell me about Little Nick. Like,
yeah,
what did
yeah,
that look like?
yeah. Oh man, yeah, Little Nick man was curious, was always imaginative, um, even mischievous at times, but was always really into music and stories. I wrote my first comic book in second grade, and I was one of those kids that was just into a lot. I had a single mom, and so I'm from DC, Washington DC, which is at the time, particularly then in early '90s, was the murder capital of America. It was hit really hard by the crack epidemic, and so my mom was just had me in a lot of stuff, whether it was martial arts or band or I remember I went to a fucking German camp one summer, like
Oh,
just random stuff, really, just whatever she could find that was free at the moment. That's what I did. You know what I'm saying? So which will actually, as I reflect and it kind of ties into my life as it progressed. But I was always extremely flexible. It's like whatever she wanted, whatever she could find for me at the time is what I did. And so, I mean, even as far as like we moved around a lot. So I went to like 5 or 6 different elementary schools. It's like the idea
wow.
of flexible and change and um, being able to adapt. Is something and switch brain into different modes. It's just something that I kind of like. I guess had a lot of practice with that. To be honest, didn't even like kind of put together until just now. But um,
Mm-hmm.
that was me as a kid, just growing up trying different things, and eventually, um, eventually finding rap. And then that's kind of where my artistic journey kind of kicked off.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that like it seems like because you were giving those opportunities, it allowed you to explore so many other opportunities as you got older?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just the idea of finding opportunities or finding the next thing, also just not sitting still is the other part,
Mm,
right? Like I never was really allowed time to just sit still. It was kind of like, no, you got to be doing this thing. And again, in retrospect, as you become an adult and have kids of your own, I got 3-year-old twin daughters now. You realize, or at least I've realized that my mom was just trying to keep me busy
mm,
instead of going down like the wrong path, as they say. And yeah, and I think that's what those kind of practices have kind of like
mhm,
kept up throughout my life.
mhm, and shout outs to dads, girl dads at that.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
that's dope. That's really dope. I
yeah.
have so many questions, and one of the things I'm also thinking about is just like, you know, what are your thoughts on this? I'm a teacher. I teach elementary. One of the things I
Nice.
like to talk to parents about is just like having kids at an early age explore so many things. I
Yeah.
find I'm from Canada, but I find myself looking online, talking to friends back home, and they specialize so early in like a craft. Even
Hmm.
at like, 8, 9 years old, they're specifically only focused on ball or
Hmm.
singing or dance. And it's kind of like, I get it, but I think
Hmm.
personally, I think it limits them so much early on that they don't
Hmm.
even know what else is out there.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Because it doesn't seem like that was the case for you.
Yeah. I would agree with you. I mean, I think it's there's pros and cons on both sides, right? Like the idea of kind of focusing on one particular craft and skill set makes a lot of sense, right? Because
Hmm.
you grow in that thing and you become a master of that thing. Um, but I'm kind of in the other bucket of what you were saying is like I like to explore all the things.
Hmm.
And to your point, particularly at an early age, because you talk about finding a passion. A lot of times at those ages, I mean, sometimes you're fortunate enough to just stumble into the thing, right, that you were meant to do, and your
Of
parents pick
course.
up on that, and they are very very gifted at identifying that and helping you cultivate it. But then there's
Hmm.
a lot of times too where parents are kind of pushing children in a certain direction. A
Yeah.
lot of times, the direction that them as a parent may have wanted to what I'm saying, to
Yeah.
pursue, but didn't get a chance to.
Yeah.
Um, and so, for me, in those instances, I think it's really important to expose kids to a lot of different things so that they can choose, and then their natural ability, their natural passion, all of those things can kind of come to the surface,
Hmm.
versus being put into a box and just kind of kept there. So I agree. I think exploration is key.
Hmm.
And also again, it's like just brain function and like learning different things and different skills. I think,
Agreed.
at least for me, just it teaches you how to think and how to learn. Like I
Yeah.
recently had the realization, literally in the last month, I was like, oh, I'm getting better at learning. You know what I'm saying? Like, and this job at Rockstar was a big part of that. Is like, oh, okay, I'm getting more confident that if you put me in any situation, you put me in pilot school, I
Hmm.
might not naturally be a pilot, but I'm
Figure it out.
learning how to learn. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like I'm getting better at learning. So now I'm like, oh, if you were to put me in any situation, I'm figuring out how to pick up skills quick and how to practice skills and what's
Hmm.
important when approaching new skills. And that in itself is something that really only comes by exposing somebody to a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's certainly value in exposing kids to as much as possible.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
the concept of learning to learn because
yeah,
we forget that you have to have those skills. Like you have to
yeah,
be able to be put into positions that challenge you, make you think
yeah,
differently. Because then over time, when you get into those situations, you're gonna have that backpack of tools to help you.
hmm
I love that.
yeah, yeah,
Nick, tell me about, like, what do you love about being a dad?
yeah. Oh man, I love the girls' laugh. The laugh is the best. I love teaching. I'm a former educator myself, so I love teaching. I love watching them learn and watching them find out new things. It's like a wonder there that you kind of forget about, through
Hmm.
life. Um, I love providing. I just love I love the idea of making their day.
Hmm.
And uh, just catering to them. Sometimes I can't do it all the time because I still got to be dad and
Uh-huh.
still have to teach boundaries and discipline and all
Uh-huh.
of these things. But
Uh-huh.
um, but it is fun. It makes me feel like just much like being a teacher is very like rewarding. It feels like there's it's purpose and
Mhm.
it's yeah. But those are some of the things that immediately come to mind.
I love that. Are you finding
Yeah,
yourself, and I know it's so interesting because you, like, growing up in a different era in regards to like when you were born, how you were
yeah,
raised. Are you finding yourself navigating like the nuances of like today and how things not necessarily should be
yeah,
versus
yeah,
how they
yeah,
were taught like back
yeah.
then? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, right now it's still really early because we're gonna get into conversations. And when I say me and my daughters, like we're gonna get into conversations that are, um, I'm gonna have to, I'm learning these things. My mom. There's certain conversations that my mom didn't have with me because I was a
Of
boy.
course.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yes.
so but there are things that I know as a like growing up as a young man and seeing the landscape of the world today. And luckily, my wife is here, so I'm sure there's things that she could probably lend to more. But yeah, there's a lot of conversations that I know I was taught that I think I have to like kind of unlearn slash relearn and reprogram. To be honest, like one of them is even the concept around whiteness and what does whiteness
Mm.
mean? Because growing up in DC, it was like I went to very radical schools. The first school I went to was called Roots,
Oh wow.
and the school after that was the African Center School. And these different things. And growing up and going through life, um, I think again it's pros and cons. There's a lot of things that really helped me with understanding knowledge of self and
Hmm.
understanding where I come from and understanding like my ancestors' plight in this country. And then there's also things that have like limited how I navigate the world because of what I've been taught about whiteness and how I'm supposed to interact with it. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yep.
like conversations like that. It's like, okay, how do I reapproach these conversations with my daughters so that they're strong in who they are as Black women, but also like I'm giving them the right tools to be able to navigate this thing, because that's been like one of the toughest parts of
Hmm.
my journey, transformation, whatever, is like how to interact with the world around me, which is predominantly white. You know, I come up
Hmm.
against constant things. So that's one example of like a conversation that I'm like, okay, I need to reapproach this conversation, and with
Yeah.
the new information that I have. Um, or and then yeah, the other big one for again at this age, because they're still really early, is like it's just discipline. It's like they say some of the craziest stuff that I would have just got like popped for. Like my, what is one of them said the other day? I was asking her something. I came in a room and they were doing something they weren't supposed to do because we just adopted a kitten, and so
Hmm.
I'm very afraid for this kitten because I'm walking in and they're picking the little cat up by his neck, and like I'm like, okay, babies, we got to do this right. So I walk into the room then one day and I'm like, what are y'all doing? And one of my daughters says, she basically says, go on about your business. She says, go back to your business, daddy. Go back to your business. And it's cute and all, but it's like how to, I'm trying. So I'm navigating that. Okay, how do I, what do they call it? Gentle. I forget what they like, gentle parenting or whatever the
Yeah.
phrase is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the other big one. And then it's funny because like the grandparents are nothing like what they were when they were, you know what I mean? When I was a kid. So it's this weird thing because grandparents are spoiling them all the time, and I'm having to undo that. So it's a lot. Anyway, I could talk all day about that, but yeah, it is a lot. To getting back to your question.
Hmm.
Yes, there are a lot of things that I'm having to like, you know, kind of relearn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the way that I'm bringing up the girls. So it's
Yeah.
been interesting for sure.
I think, yeah, and I mean, as we know, like
Yeah,
Black women specifically are
yeah,
the most strongest
yeah,
women out there and
yeah,
often have the most expectation on them as well.
yeah,
So like how do
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
set them up so they know that, and then at the same
yeah,
time help them understand the complexities around, you know,
yeah,
all the things that come with that out in
yeah,
society. And that is like, I mean, again, they're very young, but like how do
yeah,
you have that
yeah.
conversation or give them little nuggets on the way so they're,
Exactly.
slowly preparing themselves for that, because
Yeah,
we know the world
yeah.
is not always the world is not friendly. The
No,
world
it's
cannot
not,
be
man.
friendly.
It's not, and you can, especially in these times, it's easy to get caught up in like the protection mode. It's like I just
Hmm.
want to protect them. I just want them to have the easiest, sweetest time through this life.
Uh-huh.
Through life.
Uh-huh.
Um, which I can't. It's not up for me to decide. So
Yeah.
the best I can do is just give them what I can and let it go. So that's what I'm working on. Is just trying to like release just a little bit because I'm very
Uh-huh.
like protective.
Of course. And then
Yeah, yeah,
my follow-up question to that is, and as much as you can share, obviously, is what are some of the things you love about being a husband? What
yeah,
are some things when you have the time that you guys like to do for fun,
yeah,
outside of academia,
yeah,
outside of, the work stuff?
yeah. We love to go out and eat. We try to get some trips every now and then. Like we went to see Usher in Vegas,
Uh-huh.
which seems like forever ago. That was like this last fall or towards the end of this last summer. We're going to DC. I'm LA based, but we're going to DC at the end of this month for a little trip just to see
Okay.
my fam, and so that'll be cool. And we've been thinking a lot about like, okay, we need to start doing more trips, more. We're going to San Diego, so this summer will be really cool. The last few
Hmm.
years have been interesting because the girls were so young, so it was like hard to like move around with them. But now that they're a little older, we're like, okay, so we're
How
about
old
to
are they again?
explore. 3. They just turned 3.
3. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So but I love some of the same things that I love about being a dad. I love about being a husband. I love um I love being a provider.
Hmm.
I love having my person. You know what I'm saying? Like I love
I
having,
get that.
you know, it just seems like it makes life so much easier. Like I look at a lot of my single friends, no
Mhm.
no shade to them, but it's like it just seems like hell, to be honest. Like I mean, for all the fun that they can and will have on a given weekend or whatever.
Hmm.
It just I love the idea of having my person, having my partner. That's the best part of it, is just having like a partner, like a road dog. My wife is my
Hmm.
best friend. So yeah, I couldn't imagine this journey without her. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, but that's the best part of it, is just having a soulmate. I mean, that literally like yin and yang, right? It's
Yeah.
just like having that other piece of you that makes you feel whole,
Uh-huh.
helps you make the right choices. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Like all the things. It's like, it's just having that is nice.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. I've been married for about 7 years now, and
Oh wow. Yeah.
it's the same thing. Like, I can't imagine not having her. I
Yeah. Yeah.
can't. Like,
Yeah.
just it's for all the same reasons, like
Yeah.
someone to talk to, navigate situations, navigate life.
Yeah.
That person, like that best friend that you can, I mean, always rely on. That you can come home
Always.
and be like, this is something I'm dealing with, whether it's good or bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, they help you grow. So they push you when you don't want to be pushed. They help you
Yeah.
learn. Like, yeah, I echo all those things. Nick,
Yeah.
what
How
can you
and
tell me? Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, how long y'all been together? You said y'all were married 7 years. Because I've only been married to my wife 3 years, but
Hmm.
we've been together going on 11 years. So I
Uh
was
huh.
curious about how long y'all been together.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We're international. We're both from Canada. We're international
Nice.
teachers. She's from Toronto. I'm from Nova Scotia, which is like
Oh
closer
yeah, I
on
know
the
Nova
East
Scotia.
Coast. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I've been there.
oh, you been there?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Oh, that's
definitely.
dope. That's
Yeah,
dope.
yeah.
We, so interesting. We met at a job fair
Uh huh.
for teaching in Toronto, and it's
Yeah,
this job fair where you can like talk to international schools. And like I would say I was a kid. I was a young
yeah,
adult then. So I saw her
yeah.
there. We sat next to each other. We talked a little bit. We ended up signing the same contract to go to the Middle East um,
Mm,
with a couple other teachers. Then we
yeah.
end up being uh, placed like next to each other in this like apartment building. And that was
Wow.
like almost 11 years ago.
11 years.
And it maybe
What?
took
Yeah.
yeah, it maybe took like a couple months. We started talking, and like for me again, I just came out of like uni. I
Yeah.
liked her.
Yeah.
I haven't really told. This isn't on record. She doesn't. I always say like you really you know how it
Yeah.
works. I was like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
liked her, but wasn't really like wanting to commit.
Yeah.
And then eventually we were just like, yeah, let's just make this official. And then we moved to Singapore together. And then we
Wow.
were in Singapore for a few years, Manila for a few years. Most recently we're in Vietnam. And then we're actually moving back to
Wow.
Singapore this year. But
My goodness.
it's
Very
been a
well
journey.
traveled.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But what
Oh,
about you?
that's
You said you guys been together for 11 years.
also 11 years, and we met literally the exact same way. A teaching program.
Are you
Yeah. It was.
serious?
I'm dead serious. Literally the exact same way, and we were placed. Our schools were placed right next to each, like right near each other. The program that we did here in America was called Teach for. It was called Teach for
Teach
America.
for America. I know Teach for
Yeah, yeah.
America.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So literally the same thing we did. Teach for America. We met um, and hit it off, and the same exact thing.
Wow.
Yeah, we our
Wow.
schools were not far from each other. We were talking and again, like you said, just how it goes, and then from there, the rest is
Uh-huh.
history. But literally, yeah, same kind of way,
That's crazy.
without the cool traveling. Yeah, yeah,
That is so crazy. I think it's cool when I mean it doesn't always happen, but when it does
yeah,
happen when your partner is someone who is into the same stuff as you. Not even the same stuff, but like does the same thing as you. I mean, it
yeah,
can also go the other way. I know I find both of us
yeah,
sometimes talking a lot about education, academia, like what's happening in the world. But it
yeah,
is a common interest that I love to have with her because it can be like a go to, and we both feel very comfortable
yeah,
about having conversation about it. So,
yeah,
yeah, I love that. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you, my
love
man.
that.
Thank you.
What are some of the things like? Was there a specific moment in your life that either influenced or inspired you to go towards hip hop and rap or film or
Hmm.
being an author? And I do think all those things are interconnected, very much
Yeah.
so, specifically with what you do, and how
Yeah.
you bring them all together. But was there a specific moment or experience?
Yeah. I mean, for rap, it was just growing up in and around it. You know, my dad was it was DMX. You know, early on
Mm,
was like one of the early. I mean, that's who's right here. Actually, it's DMX and
I
Hove. Is
saw,
their
I
their
saw.
famous.
Those are
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah, the double XL cover. But DMX was like the first artist I really like grabbed onto as a kid. You know, like as like
Mm,
at like 5, listening to DMX, and it's Dark and Hell is Hot, his first album, and then from there, I think it's one of those things. You just outside, people are doing it, everybody's doing it, and I took a like most people like initially started as poetry. You know, I'm writing poetry, and then I'm putting it to music, and I'm listening to Cassidy on YouTube, and
mhm.
you know what I mean. And you just put it together, and then me and some friends recorded our first mixtape in high school, and the rest, I mean, you couldn't get me out. You couldn't stop me from writing music at that from that point on. And so now it was so addicting. Here, I never forget coming out of the studio. And I guess it was it an iPod or it must have been a Walkman. I forget what the device was at that time.
Probably a Walkman,
It might have been a CD player even.
a Discman.
A Discman. That's what. Yeah, it might have been a Discman. It might have been a Discman where and listening back, like literally just on repeat the song we made and just listening to my voice, and it was so cool. I don't know, it was something about that experience that was exhilarating. And then yeah, I was doing that. That's what I did. I ended up going to Oklahoma. I went out there initially for school, but got was doing music and ended up working with Good Music. And
Mm,
so it was this guy by the name of Tony Williams, world famous Tony Williams, who is does like all Kanye's. He sings all Kanye stuff, right? And you'll hear Kanye be like, he shouts him out on all the songs and all of that. Anyway, turns out
yep.
they're cousins. And Kanye's family's from Oklahoma. I wouldn't have known, but they came across some music videos we did, and so then we ended up writing two songs on Tony Williams' first Good Music project, and then he did a track for us, and we thought we were going to get signed. This is when they were recording Dark Twisted Fantasy, and
Hmm.
one thing is a bunch of stuff happened, but basically it all kind of fell through. Me and Tony ended up getting into. I was young,
Hmm.
and I thought I knew everything, and my grades were also really bad at OU.
Hmm.
Primarily because I was focused on music, and we had some motion. We was on the radio and all of this, and so once that happened, that we fell out with Tony. My grades weren't great, and I couldn't just stay in Oklahoma, so I ended up going back to DC, and so it really halted like all of our momentum. Um, and I felt, to be honest, I fell into a little bit of a depression after that. Like I was back in DC alone. My god brother, who I was rapping with, stayed in Oklahoma to finish school. Um, I didn't know what I was gonna do because I was doing like I forget what the major was, but it wasn't going well. And so when I transferred, my mom actually worked at Howard University, which is in DC where I'm from. Um, and so I was able to go there, finish school there, and that's why I did. So I did Teach for America because I was like, I don't know
Hmm.
I don't know what I'm gonna do, which is crazy.
Uh-huh.
Like when people don't know what they're gonna do, they become teachers.
Hmm.
Um, so I became a teacher, and yeah, so I did that. And so when I got in the classroom, I was teaching 5-year-olds. I was teaching kindergarten.
Wow.
And again, me being a storyteller, but also like kind of like this hustler mentality. When I got into the classroom and saw that the books that we were reading were all like, C spot run, C spot jump, these sight words, I was like, I could do this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
and there were no characters that really featured, that feature kids that look like my kids. No books talked about our community, so I was like, oh no, I could run this. And so I started writing children's books that were really meant for early literacy.
Hmm.
But I was finding pictures online, pictures of little black girls and boys to match my words, and I started using that in the classroom. And so my
Hmm.
principal saw that, some other people saw it, ended up giving me seed money, grant money to self-publish my whole children's book series, get it illustrated and everything. And
Hmm.
so that was my first entry into becoming an author. And so I was like, okay, this is dope. So I did that for a couple years in Teach for America. That took me to Dallas, Texas. I was doing some consulting with my books. Um, but it was still very education focused, and I was trying to like I wanted to be in entertainment. I wanted to be in Los Angeles. I didn't really want to be in education. And so I saw a film, Fruitvale Station, by Ryan Coogler, and I really connected with that film. I was like, "Yo, who made this?" I went again, going back to YouTube. I watched Ryan speak, and it was one of the first times I really connected with a filmmaker. Before that, it was like Spike Lee and John Singleton, and
Hmm.
even like Quentin Tarantino. But like there was like this, they seemed other. It seemed like something I couldn't really attain. But I saw Ryan speak, and I was like, oh, there was a familiarity there. Particularly because he didn't come from film. Like he didn't have a camera since he was 8. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like these other
Hmm.
guys. And so I was like, well, what did Ryan do to get to that place? And I saw he went to this film school, USC, University of Southern California, which is, apparently the number one film school in the country. So I was like, bet, I'll just do that. I'll just go to the same school Ryan went to.
Uh-huh.
And so I made my first short film. Um, and it did much better than anticipated. It won some awards. Not only got me in the SC, but got me a huge scholarship from George Lucas.
Hmm.
And so I went on and to do more, many more films. But that's a kind of a long story, but those are all the points, like how music took me, went to school, was doing that, came back home, got into writing
Hmm.
books, and then into movies. And then fast forward to 2020, when the world shuts down, I'm coming out of grad school, out of
Oh
USC,
my
right?
gosh.
Yeah, everything's shutting down. I just took
You're on
out
your way out of grad school?
I'm on my way out of grad school. I've graduated in 2020, which by the way, I got to get my money back for that because they shut down that whole semester, and I really feel like anybody who took out student loans at that point need to get their money back.
I agree.
Um, and so I did that, spent all this time in school. I had taken out loans so that because at this time it's me, my wife. We're going through this journey together. We were together in DC at Teach for America. She came with me to Dallas, Texas, and then we came to Los Angeles. So at this time, we're like both in school because she also went to film school, and so not only did we go to film school, but we had to like live in Los Angeles, right? So we're in this all this debt and um, trying to figure out what's the next move, and so everything shuts down. Film industry's closed. So the only thing I could do is turn back to writing books and making music because those are the things I could do, at my house. Um, and so I did that, and then from there, that kind of gets us into this new like iteration of my life where I'm putting out books and you know making music for films and stuff. And
Hmm.
so since 2020, I've kind of been on that wave, and things are kind of coming together where I can, I'm able to kind of make all of these pieces really bleed into each other. Yeah,
It's so cool to hear the ways that you were able to pivot because
yep.
you had every reason to quit and
Yeah, yeah,
stop.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
everything was thrown at you, and the world was
yeah,
telling you that you needed to stop, but you pivoted every single time. I think that says so much about you as a person, and
yeah,
maybe just like also the people who maybe raised you, because
yeah,
I mean, especially during 2020, like you are
yeah,
not
yeah,
just you, but like the world. There is so much pressure on
yeah,
people to just survive in
yeah,
general, right?
yeah,
And for you to be able to be like, okay, I'm gonna switch lanes. I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. And on top of that, it's not even
yeah.
that you're gonna do it, but you're gonna do it freaking good, like freaking well. Like, and
Thank you,
I
my
think
man.
it says so much about the talent that you have, and it goes into my next question. Um, you write amazing. You're an amazing writer.
Thank you, thank you.
Amazing writer. We can't finish the call without talking about Promise Boys just a little
Yeah,
bit. Just a
yeah,
little bit.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, I mean, I want to talk about JB. I want to talk about all of them, but we don't have
Yeah,
time.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So I did write some of these questions down. So
Okay.
the first question was, where is it here? So what inspired you to write Promise Boys,
Yeah,
and address the issues in regards to like youth,
yeah,
Black youth specifically?
yeah. Well, so when I was at Howard, when I went back to DC from Oklahoma and everything was falling apart, one of the other things I did is I started I joined a nonprofit called Concerned Black Man, where I was pushing into classrooms across the city for at-risk boys, right? Essentially the population that we're speaking to with Promise Boys, right? And I gotta say, even though I wanted to step out of education, that experience also changed my life because it's the thing that made me say, okay, maybe I can become an educator, I can become a teacher. Because working with those boys, like we talked about with being an educator or having kids, it was so fulfilling, like seeing their growth, but also seeing the things that they were up against, recognizing myself in them, and being able to like to help. You know what I mean? But that was such a life changing experience that like really stuck with me, that made me become a teacher. Now, when I became a teacher, I saw so many things. Man, I'm telling you, I saw so many heartbreaking things. Right, like a lot of beautiful things, also a lot of heartbreaking things. I just a quick example. That's a ton of them, but just a quick example. A lot of my kids' food was going missing at one point, right? And so I'm like, man, was a kid is stealing food. Then my food goes missing one day from my lunch, so I'm like, okay, I gotta, I gotta do a sting operation. And so I put food in my desk. I wait. I see what's happening, and I see a girl go in the classroom. I come in up behind her, boom, I caught her. Right, she was stealing food, and so I take her down to the office. She gets in trouble. She gets suspended. Da 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 da. My principal comes to me 2 days later, and the girl's back in my classroom. I was like, oh, I thought she was suspended. My principal says, yeah, Mr. Brooks, like I came to school this morning, the last 2 mornings, and they were in the parking lot. And so today I went to him and said, why are you such and such is suspended. Why are you in the parking lot? And they were homeless, right? They're living in a car in the school parking lot. The reason she was taking food is to bring it back to to her mom and her little brother, right? And so stories like that, right? They're just tear jerkers, and that's just one of them, right? That's the tip of the iceberg. So I saw these things, and I saw a gap in my own understanding, right? Getting her, like the way that I handled that situation, I was like, man, that wasn't even something I would have thought of. I didn't even think to, you know what I'm saying? I went straight to, okay, we got to get you in trouble. But the same way I did that, that's how the school was about everything. Like kids were getting, like it was a charter school, a new charter school, and there were all of these types of rules. Kids had to walk on this blue line. The kindergartners had to hold their breath in the hallway so that they wouldn't speak. Like they called it catch a bubble. So they had to do that in the hallway. So like once we
No.
get to the hallway, we had to say catch a bubble, and they would have to hold their breath like that in their cheeks, and they had to hold their hands behind their back so they wouldn't touch the walls. This is
What?
at 5, bro. This is at 5, and so anyway, just to move it along is like
That
so
is
when you ask about like yeah,
wild.
it's crazy, and so so seeing those type of things, knowing the kids, working with the boys that I work with, all of these different things, doing a program like Teach for America, which is all about education, equity. I kind of
Mhm.
had this like background in this space and was like, okay, how do I bring this to the forefront? How do I talk about these conversations? How do I make this purposeful, right? So like we have
Mhm.
the very intriguing mystery, but also how do I say something about the school system that I see as so deeply flawed? And so that was the experience, like being an educator, working with kids, working with particularly at risk black boys, black and brown boys. Those were the experiences that
Wow.
I had to bring into this book to almost to like share their story. You know what I mean? And have people
Mhm.
like turn to them and appreciate the things that they're going through.
I mean,
Yeah.
and you do it so well, and I'm assuming, and you can answer this question, or I think I'm assuming with Raymond, JB, and Trey, I'm assuming they all have elements of multiple people that you've interacted with.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
100%. Elements of multiple people I've interacted, like kids I've taught, elements of myself. You know what I mean? Like JB, of course, he's writing rhymes on the bus. So Ramon, that was me as a kid, the hustler. Like Ramon with the selling things. Like I was selling
Huh.
everything in school. I'd be, selling. I was selling jeans. I was selling all types of stuff when I was in school. And then Trey is like just the concept of like the hoop, like the dreaming of wanting the hoop dreams, right? It's the same thing of like the
We
the
all
rapper
got him.
dream, but
We all got him.
we all got the hoop dreams, right? So yeah, man, it was like a combination of like my own experiences and then experiences of a lot of the kids that I work with.
And no,
Yeah,
it's done so well. And the other part that I love, and I don't think I think I love authors who are like creative with how they approach a story and the structure of a story.
Yeah,
Um, and I love how you switch between different perspectives. And I
yeah,
think that is so powerful because it
yeah,
really lets you like zoom in specifically on the individual characters.
yeah,
So I guess my question is like, why did you choose to write that way?
yeah,
And was there like an overall message behind that structure as well?
yeah. It's interesting. Actually, the publisher slash packager that published the book, when we were developing the book, it was actually Kate Creative is the packaging company that I work with in partnership with Macmillan and Henry Holt.
Hmm.
It's a few different like subsidiaries, but it was her suggestion. She said, "Check out this book, How It Went Down." And I always forget I'm blanking on the sister's name, but it was a book called How It Went Down, and she was like, "Check that out. It's urban. It's multiple perspective. It's not really a mystery, but what they did with the perspectives is like amazing.
Hmm.
Check it out. See what you think." And so I read it, and she was totally right. It was like so beautifully written. I really got to get that sister's name who wrote that book, but that was really it. I mean, that's all I needed to see. I read How It Went Down. I was like, yeah, this is a cool structure, and then particularly me, like being a mystery writer, coming from like the school of like Agatha Christie, and Clue or Knives Out
Hmm.
or Vantage Point, like these different mysteries. What I really understood is that telling a mystery from different POVs allows you to um, like have a lot of secrets, a lot of red herrings, a lot of reveals, because you can't really trust any one perspective, because everybody's coming through you're seeing everything through everybody. Like once you're set in a book where I'm telling you, hey, everything that you're reading is subjective,
Hmm.
then you kind of understand, it's like, okay, well, this is this character's take on this thing. You know what I mean?
I do.
And so it really makes it easy to like hide the ball in places. And so yeah,
Hmm.
it just made sense for the mystery. And then as
Yeah.
far as like the messaging, any type of messaging behind it, one of the other things, because we approached it with this type of format, for me, the thing that I think thematically I was able to do that hopefully came across is that, like, when I became a teacher, or when I was even pushing into some of those classes working with those boys, I would hear a lot of different things about the students before I met them. Like I was hearing the chorus of the community kind of tell me things I needed to know, that weren't always good things, right? The way adults talk about kids sometimes is, people would be surprised or maybe not surprised after, teachers are doing
Hmm.
crazy things all over all over the place these
Yeah.
days. But that was something I wanted to settle in. Is like I wanted the community and all these other voices to tell you what you're supposed to think about these kids, so that when
Hmm.
you meet them and you see that they're just, they just want to help their abuela, or they just miss their mom, or that they just have a
Hmm.
crush on this girl, that they're just
Hmm.
kids. And so doing the multiple perspective kind of allows for that. It allows to like introduce you to these kids in a way where I'm like, once you meet them, it subverts your expectation. You know what I mean? Because it was the same way that teachers oftentimes come into a school community. It's like you might think one thing about a kid or particular kids or a particular group of kids, but then once you meet them and get to know them, it's a completely different story.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were all kind of like all the reasons that it was written in that way.
It was masterfully done. I
Thank you.
enjoyed every ounce of it, and it literally it was a quick read for me
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
couldn't stop reading it. That's the only reason. And I'm not a fast reader. I can't remember who said it, but I wrote online once like I'm such a slow reader, and someone corrected me, and they were like, "You're a patient reader. It's not necessarily a slow reader.
I like
You're a
that.
patient
Yeah,
reader." But I feel like I flew through your book because I
yeah.
just could not put it down. And
I
apparently, I
appreciate
was
it.
reading online. Someone said the audio version also is really, really well done as well.
Yes. Yeah, we won the
Um,
Odyssey Award for the audio version. Um,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm excited, man. The next YA is coming out next year. I'm really excited about that. Which is hopefully, you'll fly through that one too.
I'm very excited, and I most definitely will. Nick, where can people find you online?
You can find me at thenickbrooks.com, Nick Brooks, .com. You can find, and that has everything you need to know. On Instagram, it's just official Nick Brooks. Um, on Twitter, I think it's like, who is Nick Brooks? But again, if you go to thenickbrooks.com, you'll find everything you need to know. Yeah, man, tap in with me.
Awesome. I appreciate you, homie.
Yeah, absolutely. My
I
pleasure, man. I
appreciate you.
appreciate you having me.